Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Board of Directors meeting on January 29th, 2025 to order. Chair Jack is not able to be with us today, so I'll be chairing the meeting in his place. First of all, I'd like to recognize we're conducting this meeting on City Traditional Territories of the Shawshot First Nations, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to do so. We also have directors calling in from other territories, and we'd like to also acknowledge those nations and express our gratitude and our respect. Notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. So we'll start with introductions. My name is Debbie Haggard. I am the appointed representative from the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair of the Regional District. So first of all, we'll go around the room and then we'll go online. So I'll start with my Heather today.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Oh, good afternoon, Aklama Penny Cote. I'm the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Sparrow, Electoral Director for Cherry Creek.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oklahoma Mariah Coots, representative for the Ho-Chukwu Tribe Government. Happy to be here. Chew.
Jack McClellan, Alternate Director for Beaufort.
Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
And Alex Dyer, Planning Manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go online and I'll just go in the order if I see people on the screen. We'll start with Director Siga.
Beta Siga, Area C, Long Beach.
Thank you, Director Roth.
Good afternoon, Susan Roth for Beaver Creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Beckett.
Good afternoon, Bob Beckett, Area A, Banfield.
Director Steer.
Hello, Councillor Tom Steer, appointed director from the District of Tofino.
Director Minions.
Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Director McEwen.
Good afternoon, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Terry, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer.
Charlie, did you want to introduce yourself as well, please? Director Mastrangelo.
Good afternoon, Lavanna Mastrangelo joining from Ucluelet First Nation.
Thank you, everyone. Next we have the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions from directors? Seeing none, is there any additions from our corporate officer?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Thank you. Can I motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Director Coots, seconded by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is declarations and conflicts of interest. Seeing none, we'll go on to the adoption of minutes. First, we have the Board of Directors meeting dated January 15, 2025. Is any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I motion that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on January 15th, 2025 be adopted? Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is Committee of the Whole meeting, January 15th, 2025. Is any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can a motion that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on January 15th, 2025 be received? Moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Coots. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We do have a couple of delegations today. First, we have Will Keane, President of Waymark Architecture, and he is going to be presenting on the needs and opportunities and assessment for the ACRD office building. Mr. Keane, please go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Will King, and I'm a principal with Waymark Architecture, and I'd like to present a high-level summary of the needs and opportunities assessment that we have conducted for a new ACRD office building. This assessment was conducted by Waymark Architecture with input from Anthony Spick Structural Engineering, RDH Building Science Engineers, and Advocus Cost Consultants. Over the past few months, we have met with key ACRD staff. We have reviewed hazmat report, staff surveys, and other documents. We've studied this existing building, and we've identified key issues to be addressed throughout this project. Now, there's lots of needs and wants for this project, but we've summarized them into 4 basic categories. One is the need for a larger building, just to accommodate more space for the existing operations as well as the growing needs of the ACRD. Beyond that, there's the need for better functioning space, everything from this boardroom to the offices that you currently have to the Emergency Operations Center. Further, there's the alignment with ACRD policies on public accessibility, energy efficiency. And then finally, there's the need for a safe, structurally sound building suitable for an Emergency Operations Center. We've also reviewed opportunities within this project to engage with other community groups and to provide additional benefits to the region beyond the current needs of the ACRD office. A decision tree was created to clarify possible options available to the ACRD, and 2 options were developed in additional detail to illustrate plausible outcomes. These options considered the site requirements, structural and other technical needs of the buildings, additional opportunities available, probable costs, process, and risks. We then analyzed both options to determine how well they were suited to meet all of these needs. The next key decision of the ACRD really boils down to whether or not we'd like to use and work with this existing building in some capacity, or look for a new location somewhere else. If the option to work with the existing building is chosen, there's several options available. You could do minimal work, just bringing it up to code, or you go all the way to a complete demolition and build a brand new building on this site in front of us. We decided to explore a thorough renovation of this existing building and in addition to this building as a possibility, and we've called this option 1. If the ACRD decides to look for a new site to host a new facility, the site that is chosen will have a great effect on subsequent options available. We've decided to explore an option on a site that's a little larger than 1.1 acres, and it's just outside the Port Alberni city limits, and we've called this option 2. So option 1 would involve several steps. First, everyone in this building, all the operations within it would need to find a new space. This temporary space would need to be renovated and have everyone move into it, and it would be a temporary home for about 2 years. Hazardous materials that are in this building would then need to be removed, followed by selective demolition so we can get down to the basic structural systems of this building so we can enhance the structure as well as the building envelope. Our conceptual drawing here shows a possible addition over that lower parking area as a potential area to create additional space. And our illustration here shows about 7,500 square feet of newly constructed floor space over what would become a secure parking area. This would then be connected to the existing building over there. And you'd have a new entrance, elevators, things like that, that would actually kind of enhance the existing building and provide accessibility to the overall facility. After this work is complete, the ACRD staff would then be able to leave the temporary facilities and come and move back in. We expect the cost for a project like this to run between $15 and $17 million. It's worth noting that while it seems reasonable to make the best use of the existing building, the options available would be limited somewhat by the fact that we have existing sites and existing buildings that we'd have to work with. So option 2, which is a new building on a new site, would begin differently. First of all, new property would need to be purchased, and we'd recommend that partnerships with other community groups be explored to see if synergies can be found that would enrich the project further. After a site is purchased and stakeholders are identified, a new building could be designed and built. Additional phases of this project could be incorporated into an overall plan that would allow for future expansion, new revenue streams, or additional partnerships in the future. For instance, this option could include collaboration with housing providers or an urgent and primary care center. Sustainability goals, like a net zero building, are far easier to achieve with new construction, and other design objectives are easier to meet. However, of course, new construction is expensive. In this conceptual design, we've included 16,000 square feet of new municipal office space and about 6,000 square feet of additional prime office lease space in the same building. So like a whole other floor that's just added to your building that you can then have the ability to lease out. This, along with the sale or lease of this existing building, can generate revenue for the ACRD to help offset these initial higher costs. It's also worth noting that this option can more easily allow for project phasing, meaning that the board doesn't have to make all the decisions up front in one move, but can continue community engagement throughout the whole life of the project. For instance, in this little sketch, we've shown future housing in the background that could be added later. So the good news is that both of these options can be good options. Needs and wants can be met either way, with a slight edge probably going toward the design flexibility of a new site, meaning it's just kind of easier to tailor the building to meet exactly what you want. The real significant difference here is that the additional opportunities afforded to the ACRD by option 2. For example, healthcare, housing providers, First Nations, and other community groups. All these stakeholders could help create a much further reaching project than an office building. The probable costs are high with both options, and both would require additional funding. Both are a significant investment, there's no question about that. Our concept for option 2 is expected to be slightly more expensive. However, it will have lower life cycle costs and has the potential for added revenue. And we expect that over about 20 years, it would actually become a cheaper option than option 1. There are risks with both options, clearly, though we expect the risks of renovating an existing building. Anybody who hasn't done that, it's really hard and tricky, but that would probably be a greater risk than dealing with a new site. The process is not easy either way, but option 2 would allow the operations team to continue to work in this building while the new building is being built, and then they just have to move in when it's complete. So minimal disruption in that way. We recommend that the ACRD look toward option 2 and conduct a thorough business case evaluation for constructing a new building on a different site. As I mentioned, though, both options can provide great results. However, a new building would more easily meet the ACRD's needs. And there's a much greater opportunity to build something that provides additional value to the wider community. For instance, both options could offer some additional office space, but it's easier to do this with a new site, and you could build more. Urgent and primary care centers and additional phases of housing just isn't likely to work with option 1, and that's an opportunity that's available to you with a new site and a new building. The potential for training centers, more volunteer space, and shared facilities with First Nations and city staff are there in both options, but a new site could allow for more of it and more easily. Then finally, the potential for phasing just isn't there in the same way with option 1. Option 1 would allow the project to be, or option 2 would allow the project to be built out in steps and may include many aligned stakeholders along the way. It could be a bigger and much more important project to the community than just an office building. Additionally, this approach allows for, as I say, this phased development, and you have additional stakeholder input further along more often, and so the board doesn't need to do all the decisions in one swoop. So now I'd like to stop and open this up to questions that many of you may have about this report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. It was very clear and concise, so thank you. And I think John warned you 10 minutes, or Daniel warned you. You did very well. That was a lot of information. The first question that comes to my mind, have you actually identified a site for the new building or a possible site?
Thank you, through the chair. We have looked at several sites that were available for sale. Of course, we didn't go to any detail to actually go talk to real estate agents or anything like that. We saw some of the sites that were available and said, here's an option that looks like a plausible option. And it was, like I say, a little over 1.1 acres. And so we said, on a site like this, how much could you build? What would that afford? What kind of opportunities would be available? Now, a larger site obviously has more opportunities available, but of course costs more money.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Director Sparrow.
Thank you. You said 1.1 acres, and if we have, say, 50 employees and we have some guests here in the audience today, that's a lot of vehicles, and 1 acre plus a building is not gonna be much. You also said it'd be outside the city limits, so we'll be parking on the rural side of the roads for what you just said. So, is that where we're gonna go, or it'd be better to get a bigger acreage where we can actually park the vehicles off the side of the road? Because I don't know many people out in the rural areas that actually have big parking lots on 1 acre, so that's a consideration.
Certainly, and through the chair, I'd like to identify the fact that when we looked at this acreage, it was a blank site, so of course, we don't know all the site constraints in any detail. But when we were looking at the number of vehicles that would be required for a building of that size, recognizing the number of staff that the ACRD have and additional growth, as well as the potential for additional lease space, we recognize that a parking area, as well as a secure parking structure, could be incorporated into the same building, the same project. And there would be space to provide a parking lot as well as some secured parking like a garage or something similar like that within the building once we go down that road. Of course, the design detail would come from the actual site we pick and the actual loads. But on a 1.1 acres, it's certainly possible.
Okay. Seeing how I've lived long enough to have the fun of renovating a house while living in it and building a new house and doing all the fun things you say are done, and moving out, moving in, and living in one part of the house, I can tell you, no, that's fun and easy. And the expenses do climb up because as you push everybody into one corner of a building, as you renovate the other, you actually create twice the problem because everybody's in half the space. And everything takes longer and seems to be more annoying than ever, so. And as now I'm in a newer house, which is nice, but the costs are actually quite a lot lower than the existing square footage I have in the other house, so. That being said, yeah, a new building is more cost effective. There's a better way of getting a secondary income coming in to make it more feasible to everybody else. So we can make it cost neutral. That'd be a nice way to go. Thank you.
Well, and just to comment on that, if you don't mind, Chair, the costs that we've considered included the expense of moving everyone in this building into some new space, assuming that we can find suitable space, but we've accounted for the cost of even renovating a space to make it suitable, the moving out, the moving back in. And so the cost estimates that we've shown included what we call soft costs, which are kind of the processes involved in consultant fees and, acquisition costs and even the cost for a referendum, with things like that are included in our estimates. When I said that there's both options are good options, but certainly working with this existing building is harder. And there's just no way around that. And while we might like to keep this existing building because it's frankly a good building, and I quite like it, the option of moving to a new site with a new facility is frankly just easier to do. And even the amount of downtime for moving people around is just avoided. So, the entire staff here can just continue to work while this project is underway, rather than the stop and the start and the move and back and forth and shuffling about. So it certainly is a lot easier that way.
Thank you. Next is Director Steer, then Director Cote. Please go ahead, Director Steer.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you could stop screen share at the moment here. Thank you. That's a little easier. Thank you, and appreciate the presentation. More of a comment than questions at this point in time. The reality is expressing the needs and wants, and I thank you for that in terms of what the needs of the ACRD around staffing and all the other options that were laid out in front. One of the more difficult aspects right at this point in time is without those more detailed cost estimates, potential revenues, granting opportunities throughout. In some ways, the ability to make an informed decision. I'm not sure if that's what's being asked at this point in time. I don't see it further down onto the agenda. But moving forward, it'll be something that the board will have to look at in much more detail before we could be able to give a concise answer as to which option would be the most appropriate, especially looking down, as you were mentioning, around that 20-year time frame, looking down the road, if in fact that the cost projections would save or be cheaper in the long term, as well as some of those short-term options that were available. I'm very much interested in having those options available, such as housing, such as those.
You froze, Tom, and we can't hear you. Oh, we see you now.
Yeah, I'm just getting, it's flashing. It keeps saying internet's unstable. I don't know if it's the internet or the speaker, but myself. But thank you. I'm sorry. And I'll just summarize by saying it's hard to get meaningful questions to you without much more detailed cost estimates, potential revenue potentials, and some of the more granular type conversations we may need to have before we can make a much more informed decision about which options we'd like to be pursued. So I'll leave it there. And if there is any comments, I would appreciate, but I look forward to maybe seeing a much more detailed cost estimates and potential revenue options available to the board.
Thank you, Daniel. Please go ahead.
Just to address some of that, Tom, it's a good point. So 91A has the complete report. Now you probably have to download it separately. It's a link because it's 101 pages. But the intent of the overview that Waymark did was to go deep enough to try and give the board a good idea of whether to go to option 1 or 2 in greater detail, but not to do 2 fully detailed business plans because of the costs associated with getting those more granular costs, but also the time involved with fleshing out what valid partners do exist. So we have a high level idea of all the key partners we work with across the region, and particularly in the Valley. But that's, identifying who they could be is very different from identifying who they are. And so there's an important decision there. When we lost you, you said you're interested in housing and whatnot. Much more viable to include housing on a new build than on a renovation. And that's really some of the key costs that we wanted to be able to flush out later, is to build a pro forma based on the interest of the board. And if the board is saying, hey, we're good enough with an office, let's just make the office good for the next 20 years. Let's see what that looks like. Great. We'll go down a renovation path, bring it up to code, meet our accessibility requirements, all of that we currently have to meet anyway, tie that into the renovation, and off we go. If the board's like, no, we really want to talk about the next 50 to 100 years and think about our net zero, think about our partners, think about the service activities and the range of that exists, well, then it's going to take a little bit more time to flesh out who those partners are with valid interest, and then create a pro forma, as Director Sparrow was saying, that is as it would be ambitious to say revenue neutral or cost neutral, but certainly helps share the burden of capital costs and long-term maintenance costs.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I was not able to download for some reason. I'm not sure if it's my computer, as you can see with my internet. I was not able to download that. I do see that there is the resolution and alternative resolutions. So thank you for that, and I will endeavor to get that forwarded there so I can help in the conversation.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of questions about the existing building. Did a part of the renovations look at adding a second or third floor going up? With any other partnerships for this building, or if it's just for the new build? And also, did you look at any other existing buildings within the area that could be explored for a transfer over to a different building? Thanks.
Thank you. And through the chair, last question first. We didn't look at other existing buildings to be renovated as existing property. We discovered that the ACRD doesn't have several existing office buildings at their disposal. So any of those buildings would require new lease arrangements. And frankly, it's just too much to try and look at all the options of everything available in every different location. So when we looked at anything outside of this building, we looked at properties that would be available so that the ACRD could actually build their own building standalone rather than do a renovation project through someone else's building. The first question that you asked about the existing building and whether we looked at additional floors and areas, we did. It's possible to go up from where we are now. The effort involved would be significant. We estimate that it would be much easier to build an addition on its own foundations rather than to increase the structure of this existing building suitable to support weight above us in a post-disaster structural capacity. And so building over the parking lot looked like a good option that would provide, first of all, secure parking underneath. So you can have, parking that would be available and secured, as well as new floor area. So while we haven't designed the building, that looked like a suitable option. Now, once you start to build a new building, for instance, over that parking lot, you could build 1 story or 2 story or 3 stories. At this point, though, we looked at the amount of space that you would need to make this facility fully serviced with all the growth that would be required. If we wanted to add an additional floor to that, it'd be possible then to look at, creating lease space in an additional building like that. And of course, then, budget dependent and really it's as wide as your eyes want to be. You could go up high if you wanted to, although there becomes a limit where the additional space starts to outweigh its usefulness. So we looked at the ability to build a little more than we need here on this site. What we found when we were looking at partnerships is that splitting this building into different tenancies, or for instance, having office that is available for lease to other groups, is more difficult in this existing building just because we'd have to find common entries and the accessibility needs to be addressed in this building here. And it's much easier to do if there's 1 occupant and 1 tenant because you just take the whole building and you make it meet those needs. As soon as you have multiple tenants and multiple groups that require similar access but different access at different points, it complicates the design. Not to say that you couldn't do it, but we looked at that and recognized that for simplicity's sake, let's just look at keeping this project simple when we look at what the hypotheticals were. When it comes to phasing and like creating housing and things like that, it just frankly didn't look viable. The project, once you start down the road with this existing building, you go through the process of doing the renovations and things like that and building that addition. You've basically got 1 shot to do all your construction project. And at that point, it's done and we're all happy. And any further development would have to happen somewhere else in a different project.
Any other questions or comments? Director McClellan.
Thank you. You're a pretty good salesman, I'll say.
Thank you.
You talked as though it was a fait accompli and we're on our way. That's smart. However, I have some serious problems with the cost and doing it now. One question I do have is I noticed what you call estimated soft costs, which is probably the only part that you would have a whole lot of information about because you're the architecture, you would be hoping to do it. How accurate are those figures you give us at 2.3, 2.6, and 2.5 million as low, high, and expected? My experience is that these things can triple and quadruple real fast. And some of those consultants that I'm thinking about came from Victoria. So I notice that's where you're headed. So what guarantee would you have, or could we get, that if we went for this, if price wouldn't go up? With the Canadian dollar in the tank, it's probably not even a good time to construct, but that's another story.
Through the chair. So certainly when we look at hypothetical projects, it's hard to determine what an actual cost is going to be. We don't have a project that we can, actually design and implement and get solid numbers on. What we did is we looked at the size of a building that would meet our needs. The size of that building was then considered in the context of a new construction or the renovation, addition, and those sort of numbers. We had a cost consultant that looked at the amount of new building and the type of construction we'd be looking at. So for instance, a post-disaster structural system. costs more than your average building. So we were looking at reasonable expectations for the size of a building that we were going to build. And once we start to recognize the scope of that work, that scope would then require a certain amount of consultant fees to deliver it. These are generally percentages at this point. And so while we can't say we have quotes from architects and engineers that can deliver these things, we can know reasonably well the amount of consultant services that would take to deliver a project like that. And so those are built into these soft costs. Again, we don't know the cost of moving, but we know we have to move. And we know that it's going to be reasonable to estimate certain fees that will go into that. Again, with renovations, hazmat costs, we don't know exactly what that's going to cost, but we know in a building this size, it's likely to be several $100,000s to do that kind of work. And so again, when we build out an estimate of what the overall project is, we can look back to that and see how much consulting services or other soft costs are likely to be associated with a project of that scale.
Thank you. So you don't have a way of saying this is what it will cost, or even when we get closer, of saying it won't go any higher. Is that what you're telling me?
And through the chair, there isn't a building that's been designed that we can price. These are illustrating options and likely scenarios of the scale that we are likely going to walk into for these different options.
Danielle, please go ahead.
And perhaps some of this is part of the discussion later on the agenda. But the decision point for the board is not to advance with the whole process to do a new build or a full renovation. It's to advance with the detailed business plan. So what we wanted to do today is identify the feasibility. If we were to create a class of cost estimates, it would be a class D. Now, if you want to go to a class B or something that's tender ready, that would be a subsequent decision later on for the board. But before putting in the effort to get those detailed cost and proper contingencies, which costs more to do, we wanted to know whether or not we're leaning towards one or two, option one or two, because there's a cost involved with developing those business plans. And we, at the time when the board awarded this contract, we didn't want to assign a budget to doing both business plans. We wanted to flesh out one preferred. Now, it's within the realm of the board to say, no, we want both, in which case then we'll come back to you with an appropriate budget. But the process that was identified at the time when we issued this contract was to bring it to a feasibility as step one, detailed business plan as step two. And so before advancing to step two, we need this decision from the board.
Thank you. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we'll have more time to discuss this in 9.1. I've got a lot to say, but I don't feel it's the right place right here. Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll have a very fulsome discussion later on in the agenda. Thank you, Director Roth. I appreciate that. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to our Gail, how long do you see us able to continue to function the way that we need to do business in this building as is? Thank you.
We're already beyond capacity. So it's not a matter of whether or not we're bringing in more staff. We are beyond capacity and we have legislative requirements to meet. So when we talk about bringing the building to code, one of the first key steps is accessibility. By law, as a public building, we're supposed to be an accessible building by 2025. We have our accessibility plan and policy. We've done all the steps identified under the legislation, but our building is not there yet. And we're going to have to bring the building up to compliance. And a great example is for the public. Anyone with a mobility issue from the public has to come in the side of the building and can hopefully navigate through offices to then go to the front and get service. If we had an employee who had the same mobility issues and had a meeting downstairs and their office was upstairs or vice versa, they would have to leave the building, go down the sidewalk and come in a separate entrance in order to make use of the building. And that is not compliant with the way public buildings are supposed to be. And so when we originally had this discussion, and again, I'll reiterate when we're under 0.91A, when we had this discussion originally, it's been 2 years, so it's been a while. The board said, hey, before you start talking about ramps and accessible bathrooms and elevators and all this other stuff, why don't we do a high level feasibility to see whether or not we actually still want to stay here when we're casting out in the long term versus going somewhere else. So that's why we're at this decision point. If we decide to stay here, and it's a renovation, even a minimum renovation, then we're still going to have to look at those minimum accessibility things. And when we do that, there's a high likelihood that we're going to have to do the hazmat. We're going to, which is multiple hundred thousands, probably going to have to bring the building to current code, which again is going to look at seismic and whatnot. So you're still going to be in it for quite a bit. And so the question is, do we want to make that investment or do we want to cast out further? And it really is a board decision, not a staff.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that explanation. I know that this building it's quite complex to get anywhere. You get lost downstairs because it's a maze. And I do see that every office is very small and very full. I know that this boardroom also is very small. And as we're looking at possibly another 2 voting members sitting at our table, that's another 2 seats. I don't know. Will we have to send staff out of the room and I'll zoom in, or I'm not sure how we'll be able to manage in the future. So looking at this I think it's very timely. Thank you.
Director Coots.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo some of Director Cote's comments within that. I am in high agreement that while I understand and respect having a very large new project of undergoing a whole new building is a little, perhaps a bit leery and cumbersome. However, given a lot of the opportunities and relationship building that the ACRD is currently working on, such as our inclusive governance regions, that alone in itself can potentially add, as we have discussed, 6 more seats here. We currently would not be able to facilitate that in any way, shape, or form. It does not seem logical to stick us in a position where we are stuck either in, pardon me, let me reiterate. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we would continue to renovate the current building when we know that in a absolute maximum of 3 to 5 years, we'll already outgrow it. Why would we not just start considering and taking the time to start those plans? So then maybe it could be on the go by the time that 3 to 5 years happen.
Thank you so much for those comments, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. Well, one more thing about the renovation. You said probably put an elevator in and hazmat. We've carved this place up pretty good the last few years in the little itty bitty boxes, and people are complaining being cold down there, which is obviously an HVAC problem because now HVAC was designed for little rooms, designed for bigger rooms. So that including taking all the HVAC out and actually reconfiguring it to actually make it work correctly so we don't get the mold build up and dust problems we're getting right now, right? That's maybe part of it. Is that part of your vote too or not?
And yes, through the chair, yes, when we looked at the renovation costs, we looked at, for the existing building in option 1, we looked at 3 basic costs, aside from the soft costs. There's the cost to selective demolition and hazmat removal. These are basically, as Daniel mentioned, what you need to do just to do a project. So then past that, we looked at what would it cost to do a full renovation of the space. So that would include taking the building back to its 1960s structural system so that you would redo the entire electrical systems, all your HVAC systems, your heating systems, as well as a new building envelope that would allow an energy upgrade to the entire facility. And this would help the ACRD move toward a net zero goal. And so considering the upgrades that would be required, the existing mechanical system is gone and replaced with something completely new that would be specific to the needs of the ACRD and not kind of pieced together over time and over the years. So yes, all of those costs were considered. And so when we look at the costs that we've estimated, they are large. It's a big project, there's no question, but they include all of those things that are within it. So it allows the window for this group to say, there's a lot of money here. If we go down this road, we know that we can meet all of our needs. And additionally, there's opportunities available to go beyond the simple needs of this facility, but to like expand and be a larger community resource.
Any final questions for Mr. King? Seeing none, I just want to thank you for coming to Port Alberni today and doing the presentation. That was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Next on the agenda, we have Rihanna Miller. She is the Communications and Community Development Officer from Community Futures Alberni Clayoquot, and Christopher Hall, President of the Writers of the Alberni Valley. They're going to introduce you to the concept for the Adventure Sport Park project. Thank you for being here today, Rihanna.
Thank you. All right. I would like to thank the directors for this opportunity to present the Adventure Sport Park Initiative. I'm sharing this information with you on behalf of Community Futures, working with the City of Port Alberni, Riders of the Alberni Valley, and members of the Alberni Valley Skate Park Association. The purpose of this presentation is to build awareness about the park. I'm not asking for funding or a letter of support today. However, my organization will be applying for a grant and aid to support the park's development. The vision is for the creation of a new regional scope, all ages skill development park for the adventure sports of skateboarding, BMX, scooter use, and mountain biking situated within Port Alberni's Echo Park near the multiplex secondary school, stadium, and sports hall. The rationale for the location is based on user demand, accessibility, available amount of space, and proximity to supporting infrastructure. And I realize my slides have been reversed, so I'll just go over this one. We've received our letters of support from the City of Port Alberni, Hoopatessa First Nation, and Sechautte First Nation, from recreation, service, and business organizations, as well as from Pacific Rim School District. There's the location. The proposed park has 3 components. A new and expanded, they're calling it all wheels park, a skateboard park, replacing the old one and increasing its footprint, a new pump track, and a set of mountain bike jump lines with mountain bike technical skills area. We issued a community survey last year and received 1,000 responses. The youth survey included in that count had 32 responses with 97% in favor. The non-youth survey pictured here indicates 88% in favor of the park, with 68% rating it 5 out of 5 of importance to the community. ACRD respondents that we extracted from that survey were 92% in favor of the park, citing support for healthy youth activities, tourism attraction, and building community competitiveness for resident attraction and retention. 19.2% of respondents lived in the ACRD, with the majority in Sprout Lake, Cherry Creek, or Beaver Creek. 30.5% moved here within the last 10 years. To help us visualize the park, this is the Nanaimo Stevie Smith Bike Park and Harewood Skate Park. Powell Rivers Pump Track, Skate Park, and Jump Lines. And Cumberland Skate Park and Bike Park. These are 3 parks that are often cited as models for us to strive by, and they've been brought up many times by user groups. You may be aware that Port Alberni has a skate park. It was recently assessed and may be the oldest skate park in the province. The concrete and copings are severely deteriorated. There are few individual features, and the surface is weather-worn and not smooth. There's no beginner area, and it has fallen at this point well behind a standard modern build. Its own users have rated it an F or a C letter grade. Meanwhile, over 7 Vancouver Island communities have expanded or built new all-wheels parks in the last 6 years. The next slides show where the park aligns with the ACRD's strategic priorities. I've highlighted quotes from the first 2 pages of your plan to draw attention to its focus on tourism, resident attraction, and retention. There's recognition that the region's economy is in transition and that families and young people are key to achieving balance and sustainability. This demographic strongly values outdoor recreational opportunities. The ACRD aims to enhance outdoor recreation facilities and services to meet community expectations. The Adventure Sport Park would provide opportunity for healthy outdoor activities to a user base expected to be between the ages of 5 and 39. In the ACRD, this population increased by 10% from 2016 to 2021. Those are the census years. ACRD residents in that age range represent 38% of the total population. And in Port Alberni, this cohort increased 20%, representing 35% of the total population. The ACRD aims to effectively manage our infrastructure to maintain high levels of service and mitigate future costs. This park provides excellent return on investment. It is low impact during and after construction with minimal to no demand on utilities, and it emits minimal to no greenhouse gases. Many communities have service agreements for maintenance to be shared with user groups, and with regular maintenance, a park's lifespan can be upwards of 30 years, for as long as you can keep the concrete and copings in suitable condition, and for as long as you can repair wooden structures and maintain your dirt jumps. The park also engages our communities in pursuits that value nature and the outdoors, encouraging other low-impact forms of outdoor recreation. The ACRD aims to achieve mutual benefits from partnerships aligning efforts towards common goals. This park can boost the region's outdoor recreation and tourism sectors, promote outdoor trail networks, sustain outdoor lifestyle businesses, and add a new valuable stop to regional park hopping circuits that include more than a dozen communities. The popularity of skateboarding has increased since its inclusion in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, with growing interest from women, girls, and Indigenous people, and there's been a marked increase in mountain bike purchases and trail usage, especially during the pandemic. A single ticketed weekend event could contribute a minimum of $100,000 to the economy. And I'd also like to add that Sechot First Nation has been approached by a delegation of youth that had been asking for a skateboard park, and 8.5% of our survey respondents say they are First Nations. There's also opportunity to integrate cultural elements that honor those cultures into the park design to make something truly unique. Since the fourth strategy for the ACRD is more about providing governance services, I'll share another important way that the park benefits Alberni Valley communities. This is a low barrier, no barrier park that can be used year round. A single piece of equipment and a helmet is all that's needed to participate from beginner to expert level. There's no need to book the park, pay entry fees, or hire staff to oversee operations. Like a library, you can spend time without expectation to buy something, and when designed by professionals, all ages and abilities can share the space together. Due to their democratic and laid-back nature, these parks are known to become gathering spaces where people simply enjoy watching how participants persevere in their sport. These are places where people connect. As far as the sports, these are activities that require focus, patience, dedication, discipline, and creativity. Athletes must be self-motivated and unafraid of failing over and over, often in front of others, before they get it right. These are the qualities and pursuits that we should be encouraging in our young people. The Adventure Sport Park resolves a long-standing need for a new skateboard park and a dedicated, accessible, and safe training space for the mountain bike community in our region. The size and scope of this park is unlike anything currently available. And before I close, I'd like to reiterate that we are not asking for funding at this time, but we will be applying for a grant and aid to support the park or the design phase of the park. We've already received donated services from McGill Engineering and assistance from Lukowich Engineering, and a commitment of funds from the Gyros of the Alberni Valley and Community Futures. And pictured here, I just thought I'd end with some slides that designs for your consideration made by students from St. John Paul II Elementary School. So this is a project that they did last year. And I'd now like to invite the president of Rove to share a bit about the park's impact to ACRD residents. Let's leave those up.
Yeah, nice design concepts, but I don't think any of them are going to happen. But a fun project to get kids involved. And as an ex-teacher, you know, Rihanna talked about perseverance and self-regulation. And those are all big things in schools right now and just getting kids to think for themselves. And this would be a great project for that. It's also a great start for, and I've been here before for Rove, asking for a letter of support and telling you what we've done with our letter of support for trails in the valley. And this is a great way to get kids started on mountain biking, getting out into nature and just being out there in the world, getting a little bit of independence. And it's a great safe place to start getting some skills before you go out into the trails. Another thing that we have done with Rove is look at the increase in trail usage over the past few years. And again, Rihanna said, you know, COVID really got people outside, which was nice. And I guess partly because of that, trail usage in the area, that's the candy store, the McQuina Trails, that's ACRD electoral district, and the lake have increased significantly. And one of the nice things to see is females getting out there more and more, which is great because it's been, you know, like a lot of sports, sort of male dominated, and it's great to see more women getting out there. So yeah, hopefully support from all areas and including the ACRD. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Rhiannon. and thank you, Christopher. That was a great presentation. Just a couple of comments before I go to Director Cote. I'm pretty familiar with this project. I worked on it with Rhianna's predecessor, and I just want to thank Rhianna for keeping the dream alive. I know you put a lot of time and effort in this project, so thank you so much for that. And secondly, the city of Port Alberni offers a lot of biking courses, mountain biking courses for youth, and they're consistently filled up with the waiting list every summer. So that just shows that there is a need for this in our community. So with that, we'll go to Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for this presentation. I love the idea of bike skills, what you're creating for all ages, abilities. Sprout Lake has a Parks Commission, and gosh, I'm trying to remember how many years ago. I've been on the board for 20 years, so probably about 15 years ago, there was a group of youths from Sprout Lake that came to the Parks Commission with a fully designed plan for a bike skills park at Cougar Smith Park. They were so convincing. The Parks Commission approved it, and we built it with the kids with that brought it forward. The conviction from the youth to have this type of a facility is absolutely overwhelming. We should be supporting this because it's coming from the youth and they need things to do. It's really healthy. It's great. I was so impressed with those youth that came forward with that design myself. I supported it wholeheartedly, as did the rest of the Parks Commission. That bike skill park and the trails that we've developed at Sprout Lake are very heavily used. The city of Port Alberni offers programming to youth for the bike skills park in Sprout Lake. I know personally many of the residents of Sprout Lake are bike enthusiasts. So skateboarders. I've got a grandson in Sydney that skateboards and he's 6 years old. So and biking and all of that. And I think that it's just absolutely wonderful. And I'd love to see this go forward. So like to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree 100%. Next is Director Coots.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, thank you very much for your presentation. This is quite a advantageous adventure you guys are considering, and it is quite heartwarming. I remember all throughout my high school career and even before starting high school, a lot of the youth who were a handful of years older than us had been pushing for a long time for things like this, doing wham bams, as they called them, where kids would all get together and participate in trying to make some money to help push and help even participate with the city to rebuild or add on to the current skate park. So it is a wonderful initiative to see that it is continuing. I saw with some of the photos that you had on your presentation, know that the Nanaimo section, that project was helped to be built by New Line Skate Parks Incorporated. Are you in contacts with them? Is that a potential future plan for you guys with for using them perhaps?
We've spoken with a number of potential suppliers, and actually word has kind of gotten out because a few have contacted me without me reaching them. So we have irons in the fire, no commitment to any, and they're aware of that, like that this is going to come down to like process and who does have that say and when and how that's all going to look. Right now, we're just trying to focus on where can we get some funding for this and when can we start with the design.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Director Cote.
Thank you. I just keep thinking about the bike skills park at Cougar Smith Park and the trails and the infrastructure that we have. Having the bike skills park is minimum cost. You know, once it's built, the maintenance is really low. So where you don't have to staff it, there's a weekly thing that we have to do to make sure that it's still safe, like a report, but the cost is very minimal on upkeep for these things. So where other infrastructure, there's costs associated. So I just, that's one of the reasons why I like the idea of this. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Rihanna? Great, thank you so much. Oh, go, did you want to come up and speak?
No, I just did want to say I'm here in support of it, and I am. I guess so. Sorry, I have bad hair. Okay, I just want to come here and let you guys know that I'm also in support of it. I was not part of the people that approached council to get Cougar Smith Park done, but I was part of actually building it and moving some dirt and building the jumps, which was a lot of fun. One thing that I've noticed and I'm somewhat assuming about this future project is even a paved pump track, which again, reduce maintenance costs and really opens it up to a lot of people. It's great to have around. I drive out of town quite regularly to go to Cumberland, Duncan, Nanaimo, as far as Whistler, hotels, eating out, supporting their local bike shops as well. So it's been really positive to see the park out at the lake doing as well as it has. And I quite often recommend kids go there to learn. It'd be awesome to see something closer in town, more accessible. So I like it. I'm in support of it.
I'm sorry, I should have asked you to introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Tyler Horvath. I live in the 7300 block of Beaver Creek, and I really enjoy mountain biking and outdoor activity. Before I went to mountain biking, I was also a skateboarder and quite enjoy that. And like everyone said, you need some perseverance and it's okay to fall down and get back up and try again.
Thank you so much for coming up.
Thank you.
And sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay. That's what I'm here for.
So thank you for coming in today, Rihanna, and thank you for bringing so many interested supporters. Thank you for this project. Thank you so very much and good luck. We'll keep supporting you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is correspondence for information. First, we have a letter from the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. It's a response letter in regard to a letter that ACRD wrote regarding proposed regulations respecting the reduction in the release of methane gas. We have a winter 2025 newsletter from the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia. We have a letter from Island Health regarding gastrointestinal illness associated with consumption of raw oysters. And we have a letter from Island Coastal Economic Trust sharing stories from throughout the region. And I just want to point out that there is a section on McLean Mill regarding the filming that was done there in last quarter. So it's very interesting. So you haven't read it, please read it. A letter from Social BC, which is a BC alternative to Twitter, Facebook, and wants to help your community connect. Letter from Heritage BC regarding Heritage Week, February 17th to 23rd, 2025. And January 2025 newsletter from Alberni District Historical Society. Does anybody want to bring anything out and comment on? Director Cote.
Thank you. Just the Municipal Insurance Association winter newsletter. Just identify also that their convention is coming up. Convention, right? Yes. We've sent someone from staff continual. We try to every year. We have a fund that we get back from buying insurance through MIA, which we can use to actually support sending staff to attend this. They're learning about the toolboxes that we have available. It's wonderful training and advice that's given to our staff to help us not get into trouble and what to look for to mitigate risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? See no more comments. Can I get a motion that Board of Directors receive items A through G for information? Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Coots. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next is requests for decisions and bylaws. We have 2025 Standing Select Committee appointments and appointments to outside organizations. Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. So the report in front of you is the annual appointment of committee members to standing and select committees and commissions, as well as appointments to outside boards and agencies. So the appointments are outlined in the documents following the request for decision. One change that I do want to note is regarding the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Committee. There was one change made since I wrote the report. So the city appointed Councillor Verbuge to replace Councillor Solda on that airport committee. So that is a change that we will need to include in the resolution. And then the other item for the board to consider is to potentially appoint a director to the Port Alberni Community Action Team. So last July, the Community Action Team presented to the board, and at that time there was some discussion about appointing a director to this committee. So I have included a motion in the report if the board does want to appoint a director. So if there are any changes to the appointees, now would be the time to raise them, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm the only director that doesn't have an appointment, so I'd be happy to go to the Community Action Team meetings on behalf of the regional district if the board approves it. Just because I try and go to the meetings anyway, just as a interested party, it's always nice to stay up on what's happening. Does anybody have any, Director Coots? Any questions or comments? Or go ahead.
Pardon me, sorry, Madam Chair. I wasn't 100% sure if that needed a second. I was just going to air my support for your appointment for that position. Clecco.
Well, how about if you make the motion? I will make my own motion.
Wonderful, Madam Chair. Sounds great. Thank you. I would like to move that the Alberni Clayquot Regional District appoint Director Haggard to the Port Alberni Community Action Team.
Moved by Director Coots, seconded by Director Cote. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
I forgot one thing. There is the Strathmore Regional District Natural Resource Committee. We have Director Jack as the appointee. You can have up to one or two alternates, and I was wondering if the board would want to consider appointing an alternate in the event that John Jack can't attend those meetings.
Do you have any volunteers for an alternate, or would somebody like to be appointed? Director Steer?
Yeah, I certainly, as an alternate to John Jack, if he was not able to appear, I would be more than willing to participate.
Thank you, Director Steer. Any other questions or comments? Would someone like to make the motion, please? to approve the appointments? Dr. McClellan.
I move the motion that you want moved.
That the Alberni-Quayquat Regional District Board of Directors approve the 2025 ACRD Standing Select Committee appointments and appointments to outside boards, agencies, and commissions as presented. Thank you, Director McClellan. Second by Director Coots. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Next is Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a annual process that is a requirement of the Local Government Act in order to do parcel tax. So just looking to set the date for the parcel tax review panel meeting, and we need to appoint 3 directors to conduct that. It is normally a very short meeting. But we did have to send out 11 letters to different parcel taxes that we're going to be getting added this year. So there is an opportunity for them to request to be not included on the roll. So sometimes, occasionally, we have a little bit longer, but otherwise, I promise it'll be a short meeting. So we have put it just in advance of the board meeting on Wednesday, February 26th. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. I think we usually have 1 director for the municipality, so I'm happy to do that. And does anybody else want to volunteer or be appointed? Director Sparrow, Director Roth, and Director Beckett, would you like to be the alternate? Sorry, I didn't see your hand go up quick enough. I don't know who was first, Director Roth or Director Beckett, but we'll have you in the alternate. So we have Director Haggard, Director Sparrow, and Director Roth as appointments, and Director Beckett would be the alternate. So could someone read the motions, please? Director Cote.
Thank you. So I move that the Board of Directors set the date for the parcel tax roll review panel sitting for Wednesday, February 26th, 2025 at 12:30 p.m. using the hybrid Zoom board meeting format. To appoint 3 directors. Those Deb Haggard, Mike Sparrow, and Susan
Dr.
Roth, and Bob Beckett as the alternate for the parcel tax roll review panel, and appoint Terry Fong, CEA, CGA, Chief Financial Officer for the ACRD as the collector for 2025.
Thank you. Could you put a seconder? Second by Director Siga. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, request for decision, Alberni-Quayquat Health Network Coordinator. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So as you recall, we recently entered into a new 3-year term funding agreement with Island Health. And at that time, we notified the board that we would be going into the request for proposal for the ACHN coordinator position. The RFP was issued and we received 3 proposals. However, one was disqualified as it was received after the deadline. So 2 submissions were received and evaluated based on experience, qualifications, project understanding, approach, schedule, social procurement, references, and price. And the evaluations were done by ACRD staff and members of the ACHN Executive Committee. Out of the 2 proposals that were received, Marcy DeWitt had the highest or was tied for the highest score across all evaluations and criteria except price. However, I would like to note that although it appears to be a significant difference in the price, this was due to the significant difference in hours that were included in the scope of work. So with that, the ACRD Table of Partners met on January 15th and passed a resolution recommending that the ACRD Board of Directors award the ACHN coordinator contract to Marcy DeWitt. If the board would like more information on details of the contract, it can be brought to the next in-camera meeting.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any questions or comments? Director Cote?
Just going to make the motion.
Please go
Okay.
ahead.
Move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Coordinator contract to Marcy DeWitt in the amount of $321,337.50, excluding GST, over a 3-year term, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the ACRD.
Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Siga. Director McClement, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. I noticed that this is a weighted vote, but I read in here somewhere that BHA pays the salary. Is there a reason it's weighted that we might have to pay it? And is this price, the salaries at 1 year or 3?
Cynthia, can you answer that, please?
Yes, so I might turn to Terry to answer a bit of that question, but yes, this is completely funded through Island Health. We subcontract for the ACHN coordinator, so we already have confirmed approval of this funding, and it would be in the full amount. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Why is it a weighted vote?
The weighted vote, so that's just legislative requirements that this be a weighted vote, as it is a financial decision. And then sorry. Oh yes, the funding is for a 3-year contract, not just 1 year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Saying none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next is Consuxus Road Water Main Replacement Contract. We have Eddie Kunderman, the Operations Manager, speaking on this. Please go ahead, Eddie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, board members. I'm pleased to be here today to present the recommendation for the Consuxus Water Main Replacement Project. After a thorough evaluation process, we propose awarding the contract to Bowerman Construction Limited for $514,070, excluding GST, with an additional 10% project contingency. This decision follows a competitive tender process where Bowerman Construction emerged as the lowest bidder amongst 11 submissions. This project is another key component of the Beaver Creek Water System's capital replacement plan, aiming to replace 765 lineal meters of PVC water main on Consuxus Road. It also includes a rather unique aspect of an underground installation under the railway crossing, which adds some complexity, an additional $98,000 to the budget. The total project budget comes in at $732,000 under the initially proposed $760,000 in the 2024 financial plan. This includes construction services, engineering fees, and the railway crossing installation. All funds will be drawn from the capital reserve, with some funds also coming from the DCC fund. The project should be completed within 160 days of the notice to proceed, and the project aligns with strategic focus number 3, the management of new and existing infrastructure, and also supports the Beaver Creek Water Systems Asset Management Plan and overall plan of delivering cost-effective, reliable, and potable water to the residents of Beaver Creek. The tender process was conducted in accordance with the ACRD's purchasing policy, which also mandates a public offering for contracts exceeding $35,000. Should the board require further details, we can present the full contract in camera at the next scheduled board meeting. Thank you for your consideration and open to any questions.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Any questions or comments? Director Sparrow.
Thank you. I noticed out of the 11 submissions that the one we're choosing, which is great, is at least $230,000 cheaper than the next lowest one. So hopefully they didn't miss anything. We got it all included, or other ones are padding. I'm not quite sure, but it just seems odd that 10 out of 11 were all a lot higher by some percentage of what, 30% higher? But good for you guys. Congratulations.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion and just recognize that the amounts will come from the capital reserve and DCC funds. So I move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the Consuxus Water Main Replacement Contract to Bowerman Construction Ltd. in the amount of $514,070, excluding GST, plus a 10% project contingency, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the ACRD.
Moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Coots. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next is the Cowichan Valley Regional District Official Community Plan Bylaw 4373. Alex Dyer, Planning Manager, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this is a referral from the Cowichan Valley Regional District regarding their official community plan project that's underway. The OCP bylaw applies to the lands in the CVRD that abut the southeast boundary of the ACRD along the electoral areas A and F, near the Nitnat Lake and the Nitnat River area. So the policies of the CVRD OCP bylaw have been assessed, and they do not appear to conflict with any of the ACRD zoning or policies in that area, and staff recommend that the regional district support their bylaw as presented and comment that the ACRD's interests are unaffected. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, would someone like to make the motion? Director Cote?
Thank you. I move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support the Cowichan Valley Regional District Official Community Plan for the electoral areas bylaw 4373 as presented.
Did you raise your hand to second, Director McClellan? I saw you with your hand raised. Were you moving or seconding?
I was gonna move it for you.
Can you second it?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is AVICC resolution, emergency funding. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay, so as you recall, at the November 13th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting, the board was invited to submit topics for resolutions for consideration at the 2025 AVICC convention held in April 2025. Board endorsed resolutions must be submitted by February 6th and must be relevant to other local governments within AVICC and include a separate background document. So the Emergency Program Executive Committee held on November 6th put forward the following resolution for the board to consider, and that was for the province to create a fund for local governments to use in the event that immediate action is required, but the action falls outside of the existing EMCR parameters, but it is decided locally that there is a need for services. So at this time, are recommending that the Board of Directors do not submit a resolution for the emergency funding related resolution, given that this is so in 2023, the resolution was brought forward to UBCM, and that was for the province of BC to create an annual funding model for local governments to more adequately prepare for and respond to local emergencies, as well as where the discussion was at the emergency committee was for the committee to consider having internal funding set aside for emergency related solutions. So just for the board's consideration, if they would like to submit a resolution on this topic, there is a resolution drafted under options considered, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any questions or comments? Do you have, as past president, Director Cote, do you have any comments on this?
No, I think that withdrawing it is the correct movement. So
would you like to make
I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors not submit an emergency funding related resolution for consideration at the 2025 Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention at this time.
Would anyone like to second that motion? Moved by, seconded by Director Beckett. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next is AVICC resolution, Island Rail Corridor. Cynthia, please go ahead. You're a busy girl today.
I actually thought that Daniel was speaking to this report.
So if I can, Madam Chair, I'll speak to it. So on given that I'm on the Rail Corridor Action Committee, So on this one, with both our transportation committee and the rail corridor committee, both flagged the fact that it would be really useful for the province to consider maintaining the rail lines that connect the Alberni Valley to the East Coast, whether that be Coombs, Parksville, or Qualicum Beach. We don't really care. What we want to make sure is that in the event of an emergency, that we actually could make use of that rail line with High Rail. And so what we do know from the consultants we've been working with is that it would be a relatively small investment to brush clear and to do the necessary renovations to the trestles around Cameron Lake that would then allow two things. One, High Rail buses that could either move people or supplies, and the other is firefighting and suppression equipment that other parts of the province can benefit from via rail, but we cannot because our rail isn't sufficient. Our consultants are going to be working this year on a more detailed costs so that we can provide that. But in the meantime, we, given that both committees wanted to advance this, we brought it forward for the board consideration.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions or comments, Director Cote?
Thank you. I also sit on this committee, working with Island Rail and First Nations. Totally absolute. Everybody is in support of this. I did get to go for a tour on the, what do they call those trucks?
High Rail.
High Rail. And looking at the rail with the people that were there that had the knowledge and ability to grade the tracks, said that we are in good shape. The track is in better shape than they expected. So having this supported is important going forward, because I think that the cost is not going to be what people think it is going to be. I also was impressed that in the High Rail vehicle that we were in, there was water and fire suppression equipment in the back of the truck. So knowing that that was an opportunity to have emergency operations that readily available and be able to get through into that back country is important. So I support this recommendation and I'd like to move it if there's no more questions.
Is there any other questions or comments? Director McClement?
Yeah, just a question, who was the experts that were checking on how good everything was?
Please go ahead, Daniel.
HDR consultants, which have been brought on to revisit the and facilitate the economic argument for rail in the Alberni Valley. So it's a consultant that was hired to work with Tashot and Pachesset in the regional district on rail in the Alberni Valley.
Okay, then hopefully they knew their number, because I've heard before how good the railway was, and I was like, oopsie, you gotta shut her down because it's unsafe. So I just wondered if this one was any better.
So what is really nice about the assessment or the high level assessment, and we'll get it detailed later this year, but the original assessment that was done for the province was actually done by them. So they could speak firsthand to what the criteria were. And the criteria that were identified was with passenger rail. And so passenger rail that was part of the criteria for being met was at a higher speed and therefore required greater renovations to the existing track. That said, High Rail does not require the same degree of renovation. And if you maintain lower speeds, you again don't have to meet that higher standard, thus requiring a much lower cost to brush clear and maintain the tracks that are there. The big assessment that they want to do and get a firm number on is the trestle renovation. Obviously, that trestle has not been maintained for a long time. And so there are components that should be replaced, and they're going to get firm costing on that.
Thank you. Heather, should the whole motion be read out, or can she just move the motion? Thank you. So we have a mover. Could it be a seconder? Moved by Director Cote, second by Director McClellan. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we go on to planning matters. This is for electoral area directors only. We have RD 24005 Strachan 10787 Kamola Road, Sproat Lake. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So this is a rezoning application to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision of the 3.2 hectare property in the Sproat Lake area. The OCP amendment bylaw and the zoning amendment bylaw were given second and third readings at the meeting on November 13th. The applicant has now confirmed the capability for on-site sewage disposal that complies with the Island Health regulations that are in place. And the Ministry of Transportation and Transit has approved the bylaw as the land is adjacent to the highway. So at this point, all conditions of rezoning have been satisfied, and staff recommend that the board adopt bylaws P1509 and P1510. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Director Cote, would you like to read the motions, please?
I would, thank you. Move that the board that bylaw P1509 Sproat Lake Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw be adopted.
Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Sparrow. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead.
I'd move that bylaw P1510 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be adopted.
Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next is RE 24010 Van Fleet and Bar 5663 Mercy Road, Beaver Creek. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is another rezoning application at the adoption stage in Beaver Creek. This would also facilitate a 3-lot subdivision with a 0.24 hectare minimum lot size. The public input process was completed and the zoning amendment bylaw was given 3 readings at the meeting on January 15th. The applicant has submitted a report from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner to satisfy the sewage disposal capacity requirements. So at this time, all conditions of rezoning appear to be satisfied, and staff do recommend that the board adopt bylaw P1517. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Director Roth, would you like to read the motion?
Sure. I move that bylaw P1517 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be adopted.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director McClellan. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have reports. First, we have the Waymark Architecture Needs and Opportunities Assessment for the ACRD office building. Did you want to make some comments, Danny, before we start the conversation?
Thank you. So I think we already started with a very good discussion to this, but I will just recap some of the key issues here that we were looking to address. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm going back to the page where we started the discussion, and I'll move back to my notes. So some of the key areas that we were looking to address when this project was first presented to the board in 2023 was the fact that we were already investing in a number of different things. We were considering office space and additional office space or work from home policies. We were looking at the realities of the Emergency Operations Center, which is open numerous times a year. And the fact that it is the bottom of this building, which is not a seismically upgraded building, so it would create a problem in the case of a shake. When we look at the various activities that we do take part in, from outreach to EOCs, and even to our various community services projects, we are looking at more and more CCAN storage containers that we sort of have planted in different temporary areas, which are a good interim measure, but not a good long-term measure. And so at the time, the discussion with the board was to look at what it would require to do a proper renovation on this building, and compare that to a complete rebuild. So the work that has been done with Waymark does identify those two key areas. I think as Will King correctly identified, there's a large range of what can be considered in terms of renovating this building. And what we wanted to do is try as much as possible to breathe new life into this building for more than just 5 years if we were going to do the renovation. And that's why you have a renovation that includes heading down towards 4th Street and creating a covered parking space. The reason for a covered parking space is that we do experience regular vandalism on our fleet vehicles that are parked in the lot at this location. And of course, our fleet vehicle usage is, or upgrading is limited by the fact that even if we were to consider different source of fuel, such as electric, we actually have no secure spot to plug in these vehicles and charge up. There was a lot of consideration that went into this. There's a survey that went out to staff, and I know that online there can be some comments about meeting the needs versus wants identified by staff. But the reality is that staff occupy this building every day, and it is actually really important to check in and weigh in the differences between the things that we would want as staff and the things that we need. And I think Waymark's report does a very good job of identifying the difference between the two so that the board there as well can sort of make a decision as to whether or not they agree on that priority. It is a tough discussion to have. And this is why we're breaking it up into the parts. As staff, we have a responsibility to flag the fact that an investment is going to be required. The question as to what that investment ends up looking like and when that investment takes place is a board decision. And so we did our best to present this first phase of information with as much detail as possible so you could make that decision as to what detailed business plan you want. And again, the reason why we would want to take the next step for a detailed business plan is that this is where, as Director McClellan was saying, we go into some defensible costs, things that we feel have a much higher degree of certainty if we are going to advance and tender the project. So we'd be taking another step closer towards a project that the board would hope to have. And the other, of course, is we have many potential partnerships. We are doing more and more work collaboratively with the nations in particular. And most, if not all 10 nations that could be partnered with the ACRD actually do have some kind of activity or home base here in the Alberni Valley. And so it would be an important discussion for us to have in terms of where they're at in their next 10 plus years and whether or not there's viability for partnership together. There's, of course, numerous housing grants and an ongoing housing need in the Alberni Valley. And that is something that we could consider in a business pro forma to see what it looks like. And of course, to flesh out greater details as to the grant opportunities with the province that we could seek. And of course, we've had many discussions all over the map, whether it be with health, whether it be with daycares, whether it be with support for various in-community programs. And what we'd want to do is flesh those out with a little more certainty and make sure that when we come back with a detailed business plan, if the board wants to see partnerships, that we'd actually be able to have either MOUs in place, letters of intent with these partners saying, yes, we'd like to be part of any further phase should the board decide to pursue. Budget-wise, there's already a budget assigned. So it's important to flag that there's no tax implications to the decision being made by the board today. If there's any questions, I hope to answer them.
Thank you. First, you have Director Roth, then Director Steer. Please go ahead, Director Roth.
Thank you. I looked through everything quite extensively, and I'm thinking at this time, I'm not in favor of proceeding with a detailed business plan. We're in a difficult economy, and it's unreasonable to place a heavier tax burden on taxpayers' shoulders. The report talked about the option of maintaining the status quo, and to me, that's the best option. I understand that maintaining the status quo will still require the ACRD to address existing deficiencies and legislative requirements, but that's not unreasonable. I agree we need to comply with accessibility requirements. I think the ACRD does not need to create more space for board meetings. Myself, I prefer to attend board meetings on Zoom. Elected officials can participate anywhere on the, anywhere that there's an internet connection. Like here, right now, I'm in my office zooming in. I also think because of Zoom, I'm more accountable to the people. Zoom captures and records the vote of each elected official who appears on the screen. The way it is now, votes made by elected officials at the in-person meeting in the ACRD boardroom are not recorded unless a recorded vote is specifically requested. So Zoom, to me, allows better governance. High technology is reducing the need for more office space. As far as storage space goes, at my workplace, we digitize records rather than creating hard copies. This cuts down on the space needed to house records. As time goes on, we need less and less space. It's because of technology that we're able to do this. Also, the ACRD could continue to use the weatherproof CCANs or storage containers to house supplies and locate containers at the Beaver Creek Waterworks here. I'm not sure if they're there or not yet, but it's outside of the tsunami zone. So I would like to make a motion, and I would also like to have a recorded vote on the motion. So my motion would be that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District directs staff to maintain the status quo and to renovate the building and land to meet legislative requirements and to maintain the status quo for the next 2 years. I'm not saying it should never happen. I'm just saying now.
Director Roth, sorry, could you repeat the motion for Heather, please?
Sure. That the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District directs staff to maintain the status quo for 2 years to renovate the building, okay, with a semicolon or colon, to renovate the building and land to meet legislative requirements. Or maybe and to meet the legislative requirements, or and to renovate.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Director
I'll
McClellan.
second that.
For discussion, we have Director Steer, then Director Sega, then Director McClellan. Please go ahead, Director Steer.
Yeah, no, my comments were to further I had questions for
You froze again, Tom.
that he gave, so regarding the motion that's on the table.
Can you repeat that because you froze?
Yeah, I'm definitely having some internet issues. Yeah, I had no comments on the motion that's on the table. My comments and questions were for Daniel.
Thank you. Director Sika, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My thinking is that we should be starting to go ahead with the business plan because we have to look at expanding the infrastructure in ACRD, and this could open up an opportunity to provide that infrastructure and expand housing within the regional district. I do know that there have been agreements, and I've been involved in some where there is a government to government granting of land. So rather than purchasing land within the city of Port Alberni, I would like to see within the business plan some research into land grants through the province or through the federal government, and then that to be a starting place for a little bit broader thinking in terms of if we expand a water system to build the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District offices, it could be done in a staged manner, but providing infrastructure for a much broader development. Perhaps the security of the fleet should be considered and the emergency supplies first, and build those pieces and then build the offices beyond that. I think if I am in favor of going ahead with a financial plan, looking towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McClellan, then Director Cote. Please go ahead, Director McClellan.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's a a reasonable motion considering the times we're in. Also, I really like the idea of sharing the office if other governments wish to do that. I don't know, I guess the ones that were mentioned in the report, the city, and then different organizations and First Nation government. A lot of the First Nation governments have new structures in town now. I don't know if they'd be wanting to trade off and sell them or something and join with us. I think those things should be looked at first before we go to spend the money that we'll probably have to have a referendum on anyway. So you need more than just saying, yeah, we're gonna go make a business plan, because a business plan means to me, we're committed, we're on our way. You pay quite a bit of money. We paid, I don't know what we've done already, because I wasn't at the meeting when we passed this, but we do need to know what we're doing with our dollars, and we also need to watch the fact that we're buying things from other countries. And maybe we shouldn't be buying from one of those particular countries right now, but that's your own personal desires, I guess. But our dollar is going down, and every time that other individual south of the 49 opens his mouth, it goes down another little bit. And if we're gonna keep letting him tell us what to do, then we've got a problem. And I think we should allow our federal, provincial, central governments to settle down before we commit to 20 million, 25 million dollars. It's a lot of money. And yes, this building I'm sure is old. I can remember it being built, so please don't say it's that old. But nonetheless, I think the 2 years is a sensible motion, and thank Director Roth for coming up with it.
Daniel, can you comment on how much this first phase cost and how much the next phase will cost for a business case, and stipulated that money has already been put aside?
So this first phase, I'd have to review the contract that we had, but I believe it was for 40,000, which included the seismic review. So we had the shell engineers, the structural engineers take a look at the building and break that down. And so those costs that are identified in this report would all have to be firmed up if we were to bring this building up to code. So all that hazmat work and whatnot would actually be the work that we would be coming back to the board to approve to advance. So I would just want to clarify that we would not be having discussions on partnerships with partners if we were simply maintaining status quo. So because we don't have room for all of our activities, so we wouldn't be looking to partner with anyone else to come in here. Now we could look, and we would likely need to look at spaces outside of this building within the next 2 years if there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And so it would be important for us to consider that. The reference to a referendum is correct. Those costs were identified in the document that is in the package with a range from the least possible cost to the highest possible cost. And that depends on whether or not it would be a single referendum for the whole region, or whether or not every area would want to have their own referendum. And that's why you see such a big range in costs in that column. And timeframes. The reason why we're having the discussion now is that this is a project that even under the best circumstances, I don't think we would be breaking ground before 3 years from now. And that's, I think, quite aggressive nonetheless. There's a lot of work that would have to go into this. So we're breaking it into its parts. I will just leave it at that. Oh, Terry's on, so maybe she can give us the budget.
Terry, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add the cost of that first study was about 47,000.
And do you know about what the cost would be to do a business case? Have we worked that out yet?
No, I think it would depend on how big we wanted to go with the business case and partner stuff. Daniel might have a better idea.
Decide for that?
Yes, we have approximately 75,000 set aside for this next phase that the budget was approved by the board last year and carries over into 2025.
Thank you. So there'd be no cost to the taxpayer this year. It's already been put aside and to do the business case. So next is Director Cote, then Director Coots.
Thank you. I have a few comments. I know that we were looking at the next, a board meeting in Annapolis, I believe, and asking that directors actually attend in person because the internet is not what it should be, and it's not that reliable. So to maintain quorum, having the most amount of directors be able to attend a meeting is important. So if you're sitting in an office, and actually at our last board meeting, the internet went down in Port Alberni. So we lost our internet connection with all our board members for a while. So to maintain quorum, so with the internet not reliable, I can't really support that comment that using Zoom is the way that we always have to go. I know that it was identified, we're already over capacity for this building. Moving forward, we are going to have to expand somehow, whether it's satellites. I don't approve of any kind of CCANs or that type of environment for what we've got going forward. CCANs are not secure enough, in my opinion, and you can make them look like a house if you want, but it costs a lot of money to do that. So I'd like to see us look for opportunities now while we have this opening. I think that I really liked the idea of a staged multi-design using this existing building for as long as we can. If we could get secure land, partnerships, opportunities that we could start building, we don't have to build the whole scope of, here's our whole building. We could move maybe part of the design if it's close enough so that we can start with partial staffing, I don't know, put planning or whatever in finance, whatever into the first stage and then keep building on. I think that would be an easy way to be able to accomplish what we want for the long term. I think that right now, Canada has a lot of resources, and I'm feeling pretty good to be a Canadian today. And we have resources, and I don't think that we're going to be outsourced by the American dollar. I think that we're going to be resilient in the end. And I think that this is a time when we need to come together as a country. Get me off my little soapbox here, but I think that we have the resources. We're a wealthy country when it comes right down to it. And I think that moving forward in a staged process and working with our communities, all of us together, I think that we'll be able to accomplish this. So I'm very much in support of moving forward with a detailed business case. Looking at that, I don't think that we can satisfy our needs by putting money into this building. I think that we need to move, but it can be slowly. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Director Coots, then Director Roth, then Director McEwen. Please go ahead, Director Coots.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, I have a question for Terry, and my apologies in advance if this information is not quickly accessible. I'm curious, and I will have secondary questions after this as well, and along with it, I'm curious if we have a rough justice idea of what the costs would be for option one if we were not focusing on the expansion and it was just simply the reno, just to have a rough idea of what it might cost. I don't know if looking at half the price or a quarter of the price is logical. Just curious on that. Thank you.
Daniel, please go ahead.
Terry, I'll jump in. So if we were to do the hazmat upgrades and whatnot, so along those lines, we would probably still have a moving expense. And so, but I'll put it at the low end. So the low end of moving expenses is 20,000. And so, so that's moving necessary things out into a different office. We'd have a temporary storage expense because things like files and whatnot would have to be stored in a secure location, heated, not C-can with no heat because you can't have mold growing on this. So there's another 10,000. Would there probably be leasehold improvements to whatever location we're temporarily moving into? The range that was identified there is 30 to 80,000, and so the expected is 55. So we're up at about 85,000 now. And then an office lease, if there's anything available in the area, we figured the range would be on the low 60,000, on the high 240,000. It depends on where, how much space and whatnot. So even if we kept it round at 100,000, then we're at 185. Now the hazmat costs are likely going to be about 200,000. Now, so we have that. We know that we had prepared a grant for just a ramp to the front and the necessary alterations. So I'm going to use old figures there, but that was a $150,000 grant that we held back on because we didn't want to put money in this building if we weren't keeping it. What we don't have a cost on is what it would take to convert the bathrooms to be fully accessible, or to have a lift or an elevator. And so that would definitely trigger some code assessments and revisit. So we don't have those prices in detail. We'd have to come back and give you that. But I would estimate that you're likely not less than 600,000. And depending how things go, it might be closer to $1 million to do the basics. Now, if it triggers a full building code upgrade, then we're close to what we identified in terms of a renovation. And now you're in your multi-million-dollar projects because you're opening up the walls, you're getting the various upgrades that you're looking for. And we could break that down. So I think if the decision is status quo, we still need to come back with updated costs. And so we'd likely still continue working with Waymark to get that full breakdown and come back to the board so that we could build up an appropriate budget.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for that. Yes, so my reasonings for this is I'm trying to look at it from the larger lens before we're even having to ask staff to go through all this work that they've already done an amazing job putting together for us. So essentially what we're saying is even if we, as it stands right now, kibosh option 2, and we're just focusing on a reno that is for right now, come 5 years down the road, we're still going to have to find a new building because we're going to outgrow it. So regardless, within the next 10 years, we're going to be putting 20 million rough justice onto the people no matter what. Just food for thought for those who are listening. I know that for Hochula's experiences, we outgrew our Thunderbird office before we were even finished building it. We were still in the midst of renovations and we were having to look at other areas because we were no longer able to house our entire facility. As it stands right now, our admin and lands and resources take the brunt of the housing in our Thunderbird offices. Our human service department, as well as a few other leases, take up the whole foundation of the old Redford School, which we have now renamed Nucci. So I cannot comfortably vote in confidence for pushing this any further than we already have when no matter how we cut it, slice it, do the renos or an expansion and a reno, we're going to be outgrowing anyway. So we're just pushing it a little bit further and a little bit further. I would be happy to support a longer, more drawn out term. That does seem to be the most logical position. As we have stated, where the economy is not as great as it could be. However, we can't play that kick the can game forever.
Thank you. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the taxpayers' ability to pay. We're proposing $100 million aquatic center, or, putting the idea out there, $100 million. Beaver Creek needs new source water. That's probably advanced water treatment. That's $10 million, maybe $15 million. New building, $20 million. So $130 million. I really want to know how many taxpaying households there are in Alberni Valley, because population doesn't cut it. I know there's probably 1,100 in Beaver Creek. So when you start adding up these numbers, these are huge tax increases. We can't do this to people, especially now. I mean, Sand Group, all those job losses there, you can tell just by walking in a grocery store that people can't afford things. And I know that poverty is increasing. So we really need to think about the taxpayers' ability to pay, and it's not going to hurt to put this off for 2 years, and hopefully we'll be in a better position. And if not, we'll be thankful that we put it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McEwen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I feel because the 75,000 has already been put aside for this next phase for the business case, I feel that we should go forward with that, especially considering that if we're not even going to break ground for 3 or 4 years, it could be a whole different world by then, and at least we'll have something that's ready to go, something that that gives us the action to take the next step instead of just pushing it off. And I do believe a new build would be, in the long run, actually cheaper than renovating. As Mr. King said, if you look 20 years down the road, the upkeep on a new building is much cheaper than the upkeep on an extremely old building, even if it has been renovated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. So the motion is to push it out by 2 years, but if you look at what you need for a new business case, it'll probably be a year or so before you come back with a business case. Isn't that not so? About a year?
Through the chair, yeah, like the detailed business case, we will not have ready before December 2025 or January 2026.
So that's half the timeline already gone. So pushing out 2 years is going to do nothing other than stall it out for 2 years, and there still is 1 year for your business case. By that time, we'll have a better idea what is happening down south and what they feel they should do to us to beat us up a little bit. The other thing about staying status quo is, as I know from others that are built and realize once they get into renovations, it sometimes gets very costly because they find things they shouldn't find. And next thing you know, the excavators in there remodeling the basement floor. So that's happened too. So unfortunately, that's part of the rental job. And I said, I've done rentals in my house, and it's always a fun time when you find something unexpected. So I don't think I'll be supporting the motion as it's presented, because it's going to be a year up before we get a business case. And then by that time, we'll have an opportunity to see where we are locally. We still stop at that time, but we'll have a better understanding of what the partners are, what the cost per household is. And also Cherry Creek's going through their conversion study, but it looks to me like we'll see what happens there. But as it stands right now, I think we should go ahead and keep going with this case study. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, can you read the motion that's on the floor again, please? It's been a while.
Yep. That the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District directs staff to maintain the status quo for 2 years and to renovate the building and land to meet legislative requirements.
Thank you. Director Roth?
Thank you. I just wasn't sure if I said that I would like a recorded vote on this, please.
Yes, you did.
Oh, thank you.
Any final questions or comments before I call the question? Okay, all in favor of the motion, and please keep your hands up so I can call your names out. Director Roth and Director McClellan. Those that voting against the motion. Director Sparrow, Director Coots, Director Cote, Director Hager, Director Siga, Director Beckett, Director McEwen, Director Mastangelo, and Director Steer. Motion defeated. Would somebody else like to make the motion? That's on another motion. Director Sparrow?
I'll make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to advance for the development of the detailed business case for constructing a new building on a new site that includes confirmed collaboration opportunities with other partners and vetted revenue sources.
Moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Cote. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Thanks for the opportunity. And this will be directed to staff. And I'm wondering with the detailed business case, and I know, Daniel, you had mentioned earlier in terms of what, will you be looking at what class estimate within that business plan? And is that, and forgive me for if I forgot, and I heard a number of letters between DC and Bs. Is that part of the conversation? I'll have a follow-up question as well.
Yes, it is, Tom. And so we would be, what our first step would be is to come back with how we would develop that detailed business plan so that the board is aware and we're identifying those key check-in points. So you know at which point you're at least receiving information. And if there's a decision to be made, you can make them. But what we would do is look at all of these identified areas. What is the price of land? What are the viable locations? What are those viable partners? What projects do the partners have on the go? Maybe there's something that we can partner on, that they already have on the go or not. So just looking at that and coming back to give a more detailed view, so the board understands, okay, this is really what's more viable. Staff, did you miss anything? Did you get everything? If you're happy with what that overall package is, then we would continue and get that higher class estimate so that you know exactly what it would look like. It's hard to talk about tax implications if we don't know what the concept and partners are. And so, when we talk about revenue neutrality, maybe our business case is revenue neutral in 10 years. In which case we're building in revenue sources that might tie in houses, and we have a degree, or I say houses, living units, but that there's a degree of confidence in terms of the availability of grants or CMHC funding or low cost mortgages that we can offset, or public-private partnership where somebody else is building that portion or paying for it and we'll run it afterwards, and then we have step-in clauses in the future to take it all back. So there's many ways that we can structure this. And what we would do is we'll ease throughout 2025, we'll ease in through the process so that the board is part of every step. The final phase being those detailed costs. So you have a pro forma that gives you exactly what the impact is. And if we're going down the path of referendums to borrow, then obviously we'd want all those detailed information ready so we can share with the community.
Thank you, Dan. And just a quick follow-up, and you may have answered it within there. Within the business, the potential business plan, the options for the current property, is that inclusive of that as well, or is that something that is discussed outside of that?
So the options for renovating or for?
No, sorry, I should have been more specific. The options for the current property in terms of the sale of, or what that might look a leasing, whatever it may be, but options, because there's certainly potential for revenue, of course, from what happens with the existing property, and I suspect that would be in that detailed plan, but I'm just wondering, just confirmation, I suspect.
No, that's a great question, and confirmation, yes. So we would be coming back to identify what we could get if we were leasing this out, who could possibly move in, and if there's, if we didn't like that, what we could possibly get if we were to divest of this property. So that would be part of the business plan because it would be a revenue source, whether it's ongoing revenue or whether it's a one-time lump sum. We would identify that with greater certainty.
Thank you, Director Roth.
Thank you. I'm really glad that this would need to go to a referendum because it's, if it was held today, there's no way that it would pass. My other comment is, could I please get a recorded vote on this motion as well? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to suggest when you're looking at partners, Lori Kamir from Community Futures is another one to talk to, because she's working with their group of doctors and they're looking at housing. So. And BC Builds just loves to give away money for housing. Okay, any other questions or comments before we call the motion? Director McClellan.
Yeah, just one, I guess, a word of caution or whatever you want to call it. Talking about housing and putting it with an office building raises all kinds of flags with people. And already heard some, then this has only been on around for a little bit. So I don't think we should try and confuse the issue because they're two different things and it's a nice idea and it's up there in the love to have maybe, but I think it would cause more grief than otherwise.
Okay, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment that, all due respect to Director Roth, I don't think that she can say that if something went to a referendum today, it would fail. She does not know that, and maybe she would vote against it, but maybe other directors would vote for it, or people residents. So I just want to clarify that, I think that that's not a fair comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roth.
It's a fair comment. Thank you.
Okay, final questions or comments? Seeing none, and I'm going to ask you to please raise your hand and keep it raised until I call your name. All in favor of the motion?
The motion is that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board direct staff to advance with the development of a detailed business case for constructing a new building on a new site that includes confirmed collaboration opportunities with other partners and vetted revenue sources.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Director Coots, Director Sparrow, Director Cote, Director Hager, Director Mastangelo, Director Siga, Director Beckett, Director Steer, Director McEwen. Opposed? Director McClellan and Director Roth. Motion approved. Thank you. Good discussion, everyone. Next is the Island Corridor Foundation update. We have a verbal report from CAO. Please go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you. With the work that we've been doing with the provincial grant exploring the rail corridor with Touchot and Hubacheset, as well with the other regional districts on Vancouver Island that are impacted. Part of that work includes working with the Island Corridor Foundation and what we have done last year in the first year was we used some of our grant funds, 25,000, in order to support a year-long position for Island Corridor to take part in our meetings, to provide some of the background information, do things like, as Director Cote said, take us on tours to actually see the tracks and with the consultants to understand those impacts. They've also been facilitating and hosting all nation meetings. So they've been working with all nations on the island that are impacted by rail in order to have nation-specific discussions. Because this grant is going on or this project is going on for another year in 2025, they've requested the 25,000 plus an additional 5,000 to help them with the coordination of those all-nation meetings, which includes facilitation, book space, food, etc. And so I wanted to bring that forward as a request because for them, the position that is funded ends at the end of this month. And so having confirmation of the 30,000 from grants, so it's no tax impact, it would be from the existing grant funds, would meet all the other funding from the other regional districts on the island to fund this one position for another year. They also have an MOU and there's other elements in there, but I'll bring that under separate report. What I really wanted to do is identify the budget elements so that they know what they're doing with this position. And I can say that so far I have confirmation from 2 other regional districts that they are supporting it. So we're one of 3 left to provide that comment. I do recommend that we provide the support. It is a good point of contact. And until I think the members, primarily the nations, decide on what they would like to do with the corridor and with the Island Corridor Foundation, I think it's reasonable for us to continue working in good faith to see what is on the other end of this discussion.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions or comments? Director Cote?
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion that the ACRD Board of Directors allocate 30,300 to the Island Corridor Foundation for staffing purposes using funding from the provincial grant provided by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for creating a shared vision for the Island Corridor.
Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director McEwen. Any questions or comments? Director McClellan.
Yeah, just a question. You said that we're one of three that still, and how many are still on the Corridor Foundation as far as regional districts and First Nations?
There are 5 regional districts that are taking part of this, that are part of the foundation. So yeah, there's a number of meetings this week for regional districts, so we're one of 3 to provide those final comments. And Nanaimo has supported and sent a letter of confirmation last week.
Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We have a number of reports here. Agricultural Water Plan Project Background Report, the Food Security Emergency Planning Project Background Report, Official Community Plan Updates, Sprout Lake and Area Communications and Engagement Plan. News release funding comes to Regional District for Greenhouse Propagation and Production Course and partnership with Hupacheset and NIC. Building report for December 2025. Monthly agreement and grant allocation report, December 1st to 31st, 2024. And the meeting schedule for February 2025. Does anybody want to take anything out or comment on anything? Dr. Cote.
Thank you. The first report for the agricultural, no, there's 2 of them there. For the agricultural water plan project background report, I think that staff have done an excellent job bringing forward all of this information. That's a very thorough report. Very interesting, the process that we've gone through over the many years. And it's nice to see that those reports that are on the shelf are actually being brought off the shelf and being referred back to. So kudos to staff for doing this amazing report. I'm really all about water quality and quantity and what's happening within the whole regional district. We've had many issues in the past with lack of water or bad water or whatever. And I'm hoping that going forward, we're going to actually have a water committee on the regional district going forward, because so that we can address all of these issues. I've said this for a number of years now, and I'd really like to see that happen. And kudos, congratulations to the staff for this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, get a motion, the Board of Directors receives the staff reports A through J. Moved by Director Coote, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have member reports. May I just ask a question before I go to member reports? You have the appointee and the alternate for the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. For consistency, should we put all alternates, list all alternates? Like, why are we just listing one alternate from one committee?
Yeah, I would just highlight that there are several inconsistencies with this section of the agenda, and I'm going to bring that up as part of the procedures bylaw review. So if you're acceptable to just holding off on making any drastic changes, that'd be appreciated.
Very acceptable. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. First is 911 Corporation Director Beckett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met last Friday, and the budget, 5-year budget has been set. 2025 is a single digit, 8% increase. The good news is that following 2025, the next following 4 years is set at 5%, and that's the budget for 911. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vancouver Island Regional Library Director Boyko. Did he leave you a report, Dr. McClellan?
There's no report from the Vancouver Island Regional Library. They're having their AGM. I was just looking it up to tell you, February 22.
Thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I attended the last meeting that was still in 2024. They approved the budget going forward. Just like to say that I have had quite a number of questions from Viral regarding my being removed from their board. They're sad that the continuity is not there anymore. I probably was the longest serving Viral member and had the history. I was the Mike Kakura of Viral, which is kind of funny, but yeah. And just say that the strategic plan is set. And so is the budget going forward. So that'll all be approved at the AGM. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cotier, and we appreciate all years of service to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. It's not an easy board to be on. Thank you. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Director Minions, did you have any report today?
Thank you. They have a meeting tomorrow morning, actually, but I know that they are working on some of their budget activities for the year, as well as kind of reframing some of their activities to focus back on the business community and away from some of the other areas they've been focused over the last few years. So they've got a lot of, I think, exciting changes coming up. More to report probably following their next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Minions. Our Quality Council, Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. I have a few highlights here. They're doing their public service announcements, and the visitor traffic has increased to that. That's really good, and the average monthly user is going to doubled. So going to the website. So if anyone's interested in air quality control, they're advocating for Mosaic Catalyst cooperation and transferring of wood waste products. I should ask them how they're going to do that with Winchester, because I see them logging up Texas, and there's some big piles sitting there. See if they can get that going down there. They have air quality concerns about the possible shipbreaking industry in Port Alberni. And they requested advice from Nick Davey relating to the possibility of Canadian Maritime Engineering bringing shipbreaking operations into Port Alberni. There is slightly toxic, so you know, I've been there, done that. Since spring, the network that they have of monitors has gone down from 10 monitors to 7, so they're working on getting those back up again. And they're working on a completely revised draft of the airshed management plan. They requested additional advice from Nick Davey for necessary steps. And they're going to try and ensure some First Nations input into what they can do to get that moving. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sparrow. Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, Director Cote.
Thank you. We're well into our convention planning, and it's going to be an exciting, really good convention for all our members. I just want to remind the board that nominations are open for positions on the AVICC executive. I'm on the chair of the nominating committee as past president. Also resolutions are due, and so looking forward to our convention April 11th to the 13th. We have a few new members. The Ukilisat joined our AVICC, so one of our new members, and one of the islands from the Islands Trust has just joined us as well. Sorry, my mind's not where it should be, but thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Tawaska Public Advisory Group, Director Sparrow.
No report. Our meeting is next week.
And I'll be joining you at that meeting on behalf of the city. I'm excited to be part of that group. Director Steer.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I did want to ask a question of Director Beckett regarding 911. I was going to wait for the reports to be finished to ask that question, if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Director Beckett, I'm wondering, with the recent announcement in the north, there are 3 regional districts that are looking, well, they are going to be utilizing a new 911 service, more localized service. I'm not sure if you've heard or if there's been conversation down. They're getting a much cheaper and better service, and that will be starting in 2026. And I didn't know if you had any comments or had any further information regarding that. The only reason I know because my son, who now lives in Prince George, had brought it to my attention, and then I further looked into it. So I didn't know if you had any comment regarding that.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Director Steer, there was a little bit of discussion, not a lot. Excuse me. And as you are probably aware, ECOM is having a review that's been requested by the provincial government, which is, I think, a positive step in ensuring that as taxpayers, we're getting the best bang for our buck and the best product. With respect to the North, establishing their own center, I did speak publicly at our meeting last Friday in support, recognizing that I believe that bigger is not necessarily better, and that to maintain some form of localized service, I think is a positive thing rather than putting all your eggs in one basket. And at the end of the day, I do believe that staff working in those centers may or should have a better regional appreciation for those folks that are utilizing those services. And, hats off to that initiative. And again, I passed on the fact that I think that while our services, North Island, 911 is an expensive service, it serves us well. And in the event of a significant provincial incident, having our own facility here on Vancouver Island serves us well. And that's all I can report back to you on that, sir.
Great. Thank you so much. That's, I'm glad to hear.
Thank you. Any other reports from directors? Seeing none, I'm going to motion that the board of directors receives the member reports. Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No unfinished business, no late business. Is there any questions on email or Zoom?
Yes, there are comments in Zoom from Mike Lisowski. I'll read them out. I believe that the subject of a new building needs to go to referendum. The taxpayer needs to be properly informed by their director as to potential costs and tax increases. The ACRD needs to start spending within their budget and stop acting like a trust fund kid. Taxpayers are hurting already and have no more to give. When the taxpayer-funded airstrip starts showing a profit, then we can talk about building a new building. With the increase in ACRD employees to over 50 and an annual payout salary in excess of $4 million, are the taxpayers seeing an increase in work being done? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to move that we go in camera. As per the Community Charter, Sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. And 291C, legal relations or other employee relations. Can I get a second to that motion? Seconded by Director Cote. All in favor?